$252,000. That's the exact figure sitting in Alex Eala's head this week in Washington. Not a number someone handed her to memorize. It's what a WTA singles title is worth this year in the nation's capital. And in 6 years on tour, across dozens of tournaments on 3 continents, she has never once had that number attached to her name. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why that number matters more than it should. Stay with me. Every time Eala walks off a court in Washington this week, there's one person she looks for first. Not the crowd. Not the cameras waiting by the tunnel. A quiet, steady man named Joan Bosch, standing in the same spot. Every single match. After she outlasted a defending champion in an hour and 53 minutes, soaked through, chest still heaving from a comeback nobody expected, she didn't turn to the stands first. She walked straight to him before anyone else got near her. She calls him her confidant, not her coach. Her confidant. That's the exact word she used afterward. Almost like it slipped out before she could dress it up for the cameras. One small ritual, repeated all week, while everything else around her got louder and louder. No entourage swarming her at the net. No agent whispering in her ear. Just the same handful of steps toward the same familiar face, match after match, like a compass she keeps checking to make sure she hasn't drifted. Rock Creek Park Tennis Center doesn't usually sound like this in the last week of July. Hard courts baking under a Washington sun. Thick humidity that clings to every rally. Cicadas buzzing somewhere under the scoreboard hum. This tournament has sold out 6 years running, storm or no storm, star or no star. The organizers didn't need anyone to fill a single seat. But something is different this year. And it isn't about seats. The stands aren't just full, they're leaning forward. There's a chairman here, a man named Mark Ean, who has run this event for 2 decades. And even he has lost count of how many ticket calls have come in over the last month, asking for one thing only. When is she playing? He'd later admit, almost sheepishly, that the real number was probably higher than his own staff wanted to say out loud. He wished, in his own words, that he had more tickets to sell for her. On the outer courts during practice sessions, the crowds gathering to watch her hit have looked more like a match day audience than a warm-up. This field is stacked 4 Grand Slam champions, 7 top 10 players, 5 past champions of this very title, Taylor Fritz and Frances Tiafoe grinding through their own brackets. Even Venus Williams back on a wild card to play doubles one more time. And still, for 4 straight days, one unseeded name from a country that has never once seen a moment like this has pulled harder than all of them combined. Something in that stadium is building toward a version of her nobody has met yet, the kind of atmosphere that usually takes a decade of major finals to earn, arriving instead for a player who was practically a stranger to this city a week earlier. This didn't come out of nowhere. It's the tip of a season that's been climbing for months. Berlin in June, where she beat the reigning Australian Open champion in straight sets on grass. Wimbledon 3 weeks later, where she walked onto an outside court against one of the most decorated players of her generation and left it the first Filipino in history to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam. A quiet WTA 125 title in Birmingham squeezed in almost as a footnote. By the time she landed in Washington, ranked 28th in the world, she wasn't a surprise anymore. She was simply due. And then Washington happened. 4 matches compressed into 6 relentless days. Each one less about the scoreline and more about the manner. She opened by avenging a 3-year-old wound a heartbreaking loss to an Olympic gold medalist at the Asian Games when she was 18, clawing back from a set and a breakdown to win 9 of the last 10 games. 2 days later, she erased a 5-1 deficit against the very woman defending this title, refusing to blink, closing the door with a tiebreak, won 7-1. She then dismantled a former world number 10 for the 2nd time in 5 weeks, saving 2 match points against her own serve along the way, her 6th win over a top 10 opponent this season alone. And in the semifinal, in the first ever meeting between 2 of Asian tennis's biggest names, she walked straight through a 4-time Grand Slam champion in straight sets, breaking her serve 4 times in barely over an hour. 4 opponents. 4 different flavors of adversity. 4 times she found another gear precisely when the math said she shouldn't have one left. By the time the sun went down on that semifinal, the improbable had become historical, the first Filipina ever to reach a WTA singles final on American soil. But rewind 12 months, and this same young woman was standing in a different stadium, in Eastbourne, England, 4 championship points from the single biggest moment of her career and her country's tennis history. She had come through qualifying that week just to reach the main draw, then beaten 4 more opponents just to reach the final, ranked outside the top 70 at the time, with almost nobody outside her own team expecting her to get anywhere near that final, let alone hold 4 separate chances to win it. She'd have been the first Filipina ever to win a WTA Tour title. Full stop. She had it in her racket 4 times, in a single tiebreak. Her opponent, an 18-year-old Australian, saved every one of them, point by point, refusing to let the moment slip away. The match ended 12 points to 10. Back home, the president of the Philippines himself released a statement calling her the first Filipino to ever reach a WTA final, saying the whole country stood proudly behind her regardless of the scoreline. Small comfort in the moment. Afterward, through visible tears at the trophy presentation, Eala didn't make excuses and didn't blame the occasion. She simply said she wanted to congratulate her opponent for a great match and a great tournament, and that if she had to lose to anyone that week, it would be her. No blame, no what-ifs spoken aloud. Just a 19-year-old walking off a court with nothing physical to show for the closest she had ever come to history, and a country back home processing a heartbreak it hadn't been ready for. Here's the strange part. That loss didn't slow her down. It built her. Because now, every single time Eala reaches a tight final set anywhere in the world, there's a story already written about what's supposed to happen next, and this year, match after match, she's been the one rewriting it. The player who once let 4 championship points slip through her fingers in a tiebreak is now the player climbing back from a set and a break, from 5 games to 1 down, from the very edge of elimination, over and over, seemingly on purpose. Ask her about it and she doesn't talk about redemption. She talks about her level rising, about having more ammunition now than she did a year ago. The heartbreak in Eastbourne didn't turn her into a cautionary tale about talented players who fold on the biggest stage. It turned her into the player every locker room on tour now watches a little more carefully, because they've all seen exactly what she's capable of surviving when the match is supposedly already lost. The very thing meant to end her run early became the reason nobody underestimates how she finishes one. And this isn't just a tennis story anymore. In the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area alone, immigration researchers count roughly 4,000 Filipino residents in the city itself, and close to 50,000 across the wider metro area, and this week, it has felt like every single one of them found a seat, a flag, or a spot by the practice courts just to watch her hit a few forehands. Even her opponents have noticed it building over the past year. The woman waiting for her in the final remembered facing Eala for the first time at last year's Miami Open and being genuinely confused by the size of the crowd following her, an American player, in an American city, wondering out loud where all these fans were even coming from. A year later, in a different American city, there's no confusion left. Everyone knows exactly where they came from and exactly why they keep showing up. But you don't have to be Filipino to understand what's happening in that stadium. It's one of the oldest feelings there is, being counted out, being ranked 28th while the spotlight sits comfortably on somebody else's name, and choosing, again and again, not to accept that as the final word on who you are. That feeling travels. It doesn't need a passport, and it doesn't need to know a single rule of tennis to land. This is not the finished version of Alex Eala, not even close. She has already beaten 3 of the 4 singles medalists from the last Olympic Games in tennis, a bronze medalist twice, a silver medalist twice, and now a gold medalist too, without ever having played in an Olympics herself. That chance most likely waits for her in Los Angeles in 2028, and if this week is any indication, she won't walk in there as an underdog. Simply reaching this championship match has already guaranteed her a career best ranking of 24th in the world. A win pushes her into the top 20 for the first time in her career, a number that felt unthinkable 12 months ago, when she was still grinding through WTA 125 events in front of a fraction of this crowd. The US Open starts in a matter of weeks, on the exact same hard courts she has proven all summer she can dominate. And a seeded run there is no longer wishful thinking, it's the expectation. Somewhere further out sits the possibility every Filipino tennis fan has quietly been waiting on since she first turned professional. A run deep enough at a major to finally match the hype that has followed her for years. The kind that turns a promising talent into a permanent fixture at the top of the sport, rather than a name that surfaces once a season. She is not close to being done. She is only just getting loud. As of right now, this story doesn't even have an ending yet. Sunday's championship match against Jessica Pegula, the world number 3 chasing her 12th career title, was supposed to settle everything on schedule. Instead, thunderstorms rolled through Washington for hours. The match was suspended with Pegula leading by a set and ahead early in the second. And the two of them will walk back out today to finish what the sky interrupted. Nobody knows how it ends. Not the fans who drove in from 3 states over just for this. Not the chairman who ran out of tickets to sell weeks ago. Not the players themselves, still feeling out a match that started under one sky and will finish under another. Not Eala herself. But here's what's already true no matter what the scoreboard says once the courts finally dry. 6 days ago, most of the world outside tennis had never heard her name. Now it's the only one thousands of people in that stadium came specifically to hear. That $250,000 number in her head, win or lose, when play resumes, was never really the point. The point is that for the first time in her career, it was hers to even think about. Whatever the scoreline says when the courts finally dry out today, one thing about this week in Washington won't change with it. The sight of a stadium built for legends, leaning forward for a player nobody outside her own country was talking about a week ago. So tell me, when this finally finishes, what's your predicted score? Drop it in the comments before you find out. In a few years, when everyone knows this name you'll want a record of when you knew first.